All right, let's dive into one of the most famous promises in the entire Bible. But here's the thing, what makes this story so powerful isn't just what Jesus said, it's where he said it. And that location has a seriously shocking and, well, strategically dark history. And that question right there changes everything. It totally reframes how we see this story. I mean, it sounds like he's setting up a major confrontation, right? And that's exactly what it was. So to really get why he went to this place, we first have to understand what he was walking away from. So back in Jerusalem, something really weird was happening. You had these two rival religious groups, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Now, you gotta understand, these guys couldn't stand each other. Think of them like political parties that are polar opposites. But suddenly, they found something they could agree on. They had a common enemy, and his name was Jesus. But look at why they're asking him for this. This wasn't some sincere, honest request. No way. They weren't looking for a reason to believe. They were looking for a reason to take him down. They were testing him, trying to trap him, and it was completely disingenuous.
And, there's this little detail from another gospel account that really paints a picture. Jesus doesn't just say no. The text says he sighed deeply in his spirit. You can just feel the exhaustion in that, can't you? It's the sound of someone who is just completely fed up with stubborn disbelief.
So, Jesus just walks away from the leaders and turns to his own guys. He warns them, hey, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. But his disciples? They totally whiff on the metaphor. The religious leaders are spiritually blind, and the disciples are just worried about bread. They're being so painfully literal, thinking he's mad they forgot to pack lunch. So, of course, Jesus has to spell it out for them. Guys, I'm not talking about actual bread. The leaven was a metaphor for the teaching of the religious leaders. Think about it. What does yeast do? It puffs things up without adding any real substance. That's what their teaching did. It puffed people up with hypocrisy and rules, but it had zero real spiritual nourishment. And the contrast here is just night and day. Jesus has to remind them, hello, I literally just fed thousands of people with a few loaves of bread. Don't you get it? That miracle was a sign that his teaching brings real life. The leader's teaching, though, it does the exact opposite. It corrupts, it blinds, and it makes everyone forget what God's mission was all about in the first place. Okay, so to really hammer this point home, to make it absolutely unforgettable, Jesus doesn't just give another lecture. Nope. He takes them on a field trip, a pretty serious one actually, a 25-mile hike north. He's about to use the destination itself as a massive, real-life object lesson. So they get to this place called Caesarea Philippi, right at the foot of Mount Hermon. Now, you have to understand, for a Jewish person in the first century, this place was, well, spiritually radioactive is a good way to put it. It was infamous as a central hub for pagan worship. I mean, for centuries, this was ground zero for Canaanite worship of the god Baal. The whole area was just soaked in a history of idolatry that was the polar opposite of everything the God of Israel stood for. And it didn't just stop there. By the time Jesus gets there, the Greeks had moved in and built a grotto dedicated to their god Pan, the half-goat, half-man god of chaos and the wild. This spot was basically a monument to every god but the right one. So, because of this long, layered history of all this pagan worship, the Romans had a nickname for this specific spot. They called it the Gates of Hades, or, as we know it, the Gates of Hell. Okay, just stop for a second and picture this. Seriously, Jesus marches his followers to the one place on earth that everyone calls the Gates of Hell. He looks them right in the eye and asks, so, who do you say that I am? And it's there, in that spiritually dark place, that Peter makes his shining declaration of faith. You are the Christ. And in response, standing right there on what is essentially enemy turf, Jesus makes this absolutely monumental promise. He says he's going to build his church, and the gates of hell, which they are literally looking at, would not prevail against it. Now, for centuries, most people have read that as a defensive promise. The church is like a castle, and hell is attacking it, but the walls will hold. But what if we've got the direction of the battle completely backwards? What if that word prevail doesn't mean what we think it means?
Well, the original Greek word used here actually means to have the strength to withstand something. So let's just plug that definition back into the sentence and see what happens. Jesus says, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not have the strength to withstand it. You see, that one little change flips the entire meaning on its head. The common view is defensive. We're a fortress, hunkered down, just trying to survive the attacks. But this view, it's completely offensive. The church is an army on the march. Think about it. Gates are defensive. A gate doesn't attack you. You attack the gate. Jesus is saying his church is going to be storming the gates, and hell's defenses won't be strong enough to stop the assault.
And this wasn't some brand new strategy Jesus came up with. It was actually a call to get back to the original mission, a mission that the religious leaders had totally forgotten. They got so obsessed with being pure and separating themselves from everyone else that they forgot the whole point was to go out into the world, not hide from it. The whole plan, from the very beginning, was for God's people to be a force for restoration. Their job was to bless the nations, to reclaim ground from false gods, to heal what was broken, and to actually engage with the sinners and the outcasts, the very people the Pharisees built walls to keep away. So what Jesus is saying, standing there at the gates of hell, is a massive call to action. His church isn't supposed to be some safe, comfortable social club. It's an army of soldiers on a spiritual battlefield. And in this army, there are no bench sitters. Everyone plays. So that's really the heart of it. The mission isn't to build bigger walls to hide from the dark. It's to go out and kick down the gates of hell. It's to advance into enemy territory with a message of hope and to take back ground that's been lost, defeating darkness on its own turf. And that leaves us with a pretty tough question to ask ourselves, doesn't it? When you look at your own life, your own community, are we just playing defense, huddled together, just trying to survive? Or if we actually grasped what Jesus was saying, that we are meant to be on offense, leading the charge right up to the very gates of hell?